Giant Chinese balloon that had been floating across parts of the United States has been shot down by an American fighter jet.
For the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible. And I want to compliment our aviators who did it, and we'll have more to report on this a little later. I told them to shoot it down.
The truth is probably a lot less sexy than people think.
Right, people want it to be a UFO.
Yeah,
But also, it's definitely not.
Also,
But I want it to be that.
That'd be great.
Alien war with
You think
like,
aliens
dumb
are coming
aliens.
in a balloon?
US and war? A cliché, we know. But what if this time you're fighting a war against an enemy that you're convinced isn't real and lives outside the bounds of planet Earth? With the way the US government is acting, it might turn out that all those conspiracy theories about UFOs and aliens might be true. Is it possible that the Pentagon is hiding secrets bigger than whatever lies inside Area 51? Whatever the reason may be, something big is happening. So, let's get right into it. Another day, another object shot down from the sky. So, what's happening above our heads? Well, what we know is that the US Air Force seems occupied with blasting off skybound balloons and fueling conspiracies these days. But we know what you're thinking. Shooting down a couple of objects doesn't mean we are in the middle of extraterrestrial warfare, or that aliens even exist. That would be a big fetch. The whirling fighter jets around the air bases isn't an uncommon occurrence. Skies have to be protected and threats have to be eliminated. But the fact that the US Air Force is using its most advanced jets and detection systems to shoot random things floating in the air is a big concern. Plus, the Biden administration is oddly quiet, hush-hush, about detailing the Air Force operations. So far, the only object which has been identified out of the fallen is a Chinese surveillance balloon that was allegedly spying on air bases in the US. But for the rest of the objects, we might as well be taking shots in the dark. There have been rumors that one object was as big as a car, while another one was a miniature version of the Chinese balloon. Apart from that, there's nothing absolute about the appearance of the objects. Spy balloons date back to the Soviet mechanisms to surveil their enemies, and of course, China's military has made them into top-notch but obvious tools of unmanned spying. Yet, what happens when the aerial objects don't look like spy hardware at all? Sure, using hovering balloons to kickstart geopolitical tensions is one thing, but you also use such aerial technology for tracking weather. Now, the US isn't fighting a territorial war, yet pretty sure the Air Force isn't idle enough to detect a civilian balloon as a threat. Even the officials are confused about the matter. There's been no mention of any sort of alien activity, but the objects have been tagged as unidentified. North America has quite some history when it comes to UFO sightings. There have been records of it since the late 1940s and 1950s. For example, the one that happened in 1947 in Mexico. The object crashed into a barnyard of all places. Poor farmers. Considering this and all the crop circle incidents, it seems aliens just love to hate them. The military gathered the debris from the crash site, but after that, the statement they released to the public claimed it had just been a weather balloon. And we see the US government using similar ruses today. Then there's the invasion of the White House, which took place in 1952, when several UFO sightings were reported for days. It kicked off the whole UFO craze, and people were in hysterics throughout the 50s and 60s. People were genuinely afraid that the world was under attack from aliens, and that they would be abducted at any minute. But here's the thing. As of now, the Biden administration isn't just dealing with random UFO sightings. The active involvement of the military speaks volumes. When the president is signing off operation after operation to eliminate the vague attack, you know something is up. And Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett might have debunked every theory on the matter ever posted on Reddit, because he had something shocking to say. And let's just say, Occam's razor comes in handy. We love conspiracy theories, but at times, the simplest explanations are the best. But when we say a simple explanation, it doesn't mean it isn't sinister, crafty, and terrifying. According to the congressman, the US has decided to make use of the UFO sightings and hovering aerial objects. Conspiracy fodder is fun, but it doesn't yield any practical benefit. So now, the military is seeking to reverse engineer the UFO tech to find their way to become the top dog in weaponry prowess. You heard that right. Modifying the UFO tech to further enhance the military arsenal is the newest development in the ET conspiracy zone. And while it sounds like the plot of an excellent sci-fi movie, the reality isn't fictional at all. By making use of debris and the remains of captured aircraft, the US officials don't only aim to learn more about the world beyond us, but they also want to replicate the tech. And by the looks of it, state-sponsored extraterrestrial engineering isn't a new phenomenon either. Back in 2021, the US Congress had tabled a bill to fund more research and experimentation in making use of UAP. Basically, the bill argued for more aerial protection from the myriad of US enemies. Yet the most essential part of the bill was to adapt to any characteristics of UFOs that would enhance the US weaponry. Of course, the government didn't put much emphasis on reverse engineering of the UFO tech, but very quietly, it did instruct its UFO task force to take matters into their own hands. So it's very likely that the task force has now started to make power moves, and their closest ally is the US Air Force, because the unidentified, anomalous phenomenons are rising in number. UFOs have been shot down at different locations. The first shooting happened in Alaska, and it wasn't some small, easily ignorable object either. The object shot down was as big as a car, and it was located at 40,000 feet. Yikes. The military had called it a potential risk to civilian air traffic. It was detected by ground radars first. Fighter jets were sent afterward to detect the cause. The pilots who were assigned the duties claimed that the object was unmanned. The next one is in northern Canada. Both countries, US and Canada, were responsible for this one, although no statement has been given for why it was shot down. Yet there has been a statement from the officials that they will look into the wreckage much more closely. And then, to add fuel to the fire, another incident took place in Michigan. The Air Force, bound in their F-16s, knocked down another airborne object above Lake Huron in Michigan. The object was 20,000 feet above sea level, which is considered a major threat to civilian aviation in the area. No matter how the sighting of a UFO goes, the Air Force seems to largely focus on retrieving the wreckage of anything that they are shooting down, even if they have to go into the deepest pits of the ocean. Even considering it a typical practice, what remains unprecedented is the number of shootings of UFOs and more sightings of UAPs. Experts from the Intel Department and Pentagon are dealing with the matter, but they are hellbound on keeping their statements quite vague. Not to mention, the US armed forces seem to be in a hurry to knock down the objects without any communication whatsoever, and even China expressed its anger after the first incident took place. Basically, the shoot first, ask questions later is riding high for the US. As a result of the frequent sightings, the watchfulness in the area has increased. The crafts, which were previously allowed to pass on the radar, are now being kept a watch on. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD, has been upscaled to make it more sensitive. It is detecting more objects now than it did before. But why the sudden infatuation with reverse engineering the UFO tech? Well, it's not hard to see that the times are changing drastically. Here's the thing. The race for space colonization hasn't been this rigorous ever in historical times. As more and more private ventures of space travel emerge, the US would definitely hope to keep itself on the podium for the race. That means keeping Chinese and Russian space exploration gigs at bay. And especially after the US Space Force was made operational in 2019, it makes sense why the government wants to make weapons suited for space, and whoever lives there. You see, you simply don't fight wars with guns and grenades when you're shooting for the sky. Quite literally. You don't bring a knife to a gunfight, do you?